Well, hello everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of Cardboard Time. I am Arwen.
This is Justin.
Today's beer of the day is the Brother Thelonious from North Coast Brewing out of California. It is a Belgian-style Abbey Ale, so those are really my jam. I love them. The only problem is they are difficult to have before we record a podcast because they are very high ABV. I just need to make sure to keep my wits about me as we're recording. So sweet with a little kick, heavy on the malt, and just a hint of banana. It's a really nice flavor. It's really smooth. I enjoy it, and I may go back and get some more of this.
So I picked up a multi-pack of Southern Tier, which is usually a pretty solid brewing company. I got 8 days a week, and I thought this was going to say infinitely crushable. It's just infinitely drinkable, and it's actually a blonde ale. I thought these were all IPAs. So I wonder if I can even taste this. That's actually not bad, which means back in the old days when I enjoyed blonde ales, I might think this was pretty bitter. But right now that I'm tainted with pine flavor, this is pretty good. Like a very, very subtle IPA bite to it.
You know, if I ever started my own microbrewing company, which we talked about brewing beer
we've talked about this
a number of times, but it's a process. It's very complicated, and with recording a podcast every 2 weeks, it's not something that I really want to get into right now. But I always wanted to make like a quad IPA that was ridiculously hoppy and just call it Pinecone.
And back when we used to make fun of IPAs, and now I'm one of them.
I enjoy my share of IPAs, so
Yeah.
I will have them every once in a while. And it's hard when you are really into microbreweries.
Well, that's true. It's just
A lot of them.
I finally switched over to where now I find them enjoyable, and I'm afraid I can't taste anything else.
Well, now you can't go back.
I need to figure out how to get clean. I just don't know how to do it.
I'm not sure how to cleanse your palate of that.
Oh, I mean, my wife recommended cutting it off for a while, but I don't know if just drinking Yingling and hams for a while would do it, or if I got to go cold turkey. I don't know.
Anyways, as we always say, this is a board game show and not a beer show. Just a little update on my count. I am down to 188 unplayed games. I played 3 so far this year. Unfortunately, somebody came over with a game.
Just one. It barely even counts
one.
as a game.
Well, it still counts because it's on the shelf and it's sitting there mocking me, saying, well, I'm one more that you got to get out. But a net -2, which is fairly decent. Again, I would like to be further along than this, but I will take any sort of progress right now.
I'd really like to see some sort of animated graphic where you can see the gains and losses fighting each other on your shelf of shame.
We played a couple of games during the past 2 weeks. The first one is Downforce. Back in 2017, this came out from 2 to 6 players, 20 to 40 minutes, designed by Rob Davio, Justin Jacobson, and Wolfgang Kramer. Quite the trio there. Published by Restoration Games. In Downforce, players bid on cars, which starts them with negative points. So if you bid the most points, you get the car, and that is your car for the race. Cars move based on players playing different cards. On those cards, you have movement for often multiple cars in different amounts. So usually when you're betting, you want to bet on cars that have high point values on the cards that you were dealt. During the race, you're going to bet 3 different times on who will win. At the end of the race, you see what places everybody finishes in, and points are awarded not only based on position, but also for any bets that were correct. So it's a mix between placing really well in the race and having your bets score out really well.
And they're balanced pretty well.
I think so. So, Justin, go ahead and tell us your thoughts on Downforce.
So I heard you mention Restoration Games, which means this is an older game that's republished. Mm-hmm. Like, you know how old the original is?
I'm actually not sure. That is a great question. I should have done some research before this.
It kind of has that Millborn feel, that old card game.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it could have been around a while. Yeah, it's definitely unique. And what I really like about it is it seems like it's more about the backroom betting of racing than it is the race itself, right? You got your three ways to score. One is, well, your negative points on how much you spent on your race car or cars. So you can have multiple cars, and you could race, or you could play the game without a car too, and still have a chance to win just by betting properly. It's a neat mix, right? So you got negative points from your starting auction, and you get positive points for winning the race or placing in the race, and you get positive points for making proper bets. And I don't know, it's just a neat mix.
Having that balance between the two is really the intriguing part of this game. So many racing games are just, I need to get to the finish line first to win. So having that mix between those is really fascinating. I liked it too.
And it just kind of a nice flavor of reminding you of all the betting going on around it. It's quick too. I would say, again, if it needs to be stated again, we've been playing all of our games online for social distancing. It might play quicker online because of the automated scripts, but still, I think it's still a pretty quick game. We played with quite a few light gamer friends, and they all seem to enjoy it. It's a good sign for it. So not too hard to teach.
The teach is short, it's very easy, but it is much easier on the tabletop. I think I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but games in general do seem to be much more difficult to teach over the internet than they are physically, just because you don't have the components. And my teaching style usually relied on having those physical components actually in front of me to really teach the game. It is very simple to teach and quick, but you definitely will have an advantage if you do get this out physically.
Yeah, you struggled with that one online because it's so hard to show people what we were looking at. But I would say we were playing careful and trying not to burn our light gamer friends by not knowing the rules and then getting stuck at the end and, being unhappy, right? So we explained everything. I would recommend anyone getting into this, just jump into it. In the BGA version, won't let you do anything illegal, so you're going to learn as you go. We were being extra cautious, trying to get anyone sour on it on their first go, and that just took too long.
So I think this game is really good for the lighter crowd. I do think that you can get it out with a wide audience. I honestly believe that this is the best game that Restoration has offered yet, and that's pretty high praise coming from a fan of Fireball Island. I know that Fireball Island had its issues, especially when it came to storage, but I really enjoy Downforce, and I think Downforce has a very lasting shelf presence.
Something we forgot to mention is the powers, too. You can add in, like each racer gets a separate power. Maybe they're faster on straightaways, or you can change up the order that the cars move in or something like that. It just, adds flavor, and each game is a little different that way, so you don't get in too much of a rut. So that was also nice.
And like I said before, I really like the betting mechanic and the interplay with the racing and the betting. So you have to be careful about how much you pay at the beginning to really run the car that seems like the best fit for you. You may wind up having to pay through the nose to get that car, and it may not wind up being worth it depending on the cards that everybody else has.
And you don't even have to race to win, really. I think it would be tricky, but, the opportunity is there. You can win solely on betting. You can race really well and lose,
You can refuse all the cars that come to you and just basically say, okay, I'm just going to bet. And I've never seen anybody do it. I've always seen everybody has had at least one car in every playthrough that I've done of this. I might try that strategy at some point just to see how it goes.
It would be fun. I don't think I'd recommend it as a winning strategy.
No.
Just if your hand didn't give you the opportunity to waste your starting cash.
Well, I would say especially if you have a pretty diverse hand, or if you have a hand that really favors a certain car, somebody else can spend the money on picking up.
Yeah.
And then you come in and you just bet it, and then you wind up helping them win the race.
See, it has all that backroom feel to it. It's fantastic.
It does. It's really a solid game.
You know what? Our first game, someone else won it for me, didn't they? I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to win with this car. And like two of the other players just shot me through.
I don't think you can win it yourself. I think even if you have the best cards for your car that you've picked up, I don't think you can necessarily win it for yourself. You have to convince others of really trying to propel you. So that betting element actually does help trying to convince people, hey, I'm in first. I know you guys bet on me, so why don't you go ahead and make sure that I finish first?
Yep, and then they will, because that's their ticket to win too. So
And then they have to hope that they, wind up finishing second or third and getting some points off of their car. So it's really a very interesting dynamic, and I really like it a lot. Another bonus is the fact that nobody flipped the table or stormed off like we've had in Formula D when we played that. I swear every single time that game comes to the table, somebody gets upset and leaves.
You can do some of the same things in this where you block them and stuff, but I think maybe because we weren't face to face this time around. I think this has plenty of potential for table flips.
I would agree.
The right kind of potential. We like to build that animosity in our games.
It's a really wonderful game. I really highly recommend it if someone were to say, okay, you can only have one racing game on your shelf. I think Downforce would probably be that game. And the praise that it's received is very well deserved. That is Downforce.
Okay, next game on our ticket. We also played this on Board Game Arena, Elfenland from 2015.
The new version is from 2015. The original version was from 1998.
Okay, see, that feels more right. It does have that old crunchy feel to it. 2 to 6 players, 45 to 90 minutes, designed by Alan Moon.
Justin, just to interrupt you real quick, did you know that Alan Moon recorded a country album in 1998 to celebrate his Spiel des Jahres win for this game?
Do you own that album?
I don't, because he only shared it with family and friends. And I don't think that it's commercially available at all. Reading through his Board Game Geek bio, I don't think that it's actually available for purchase, which I would love to hear that. I mean, what is it? Like a regular country album? Is it, board game related songs like I Couldn't Complete My Last Ticket, that kind of thing? Like, I don't know. I need to know these things.
I think this is the venue for you to make the plea to Alan and Alan's friends and family, please.
If by some miracle,
please, can we have a copy?
Alan Moon winds up listening to this podcast or one of his friends, please, I need to hear this. I need to, or at least a song. And maybe that's more. He's done a lot of conventions. Maybe that's out there, where he's gotten up on stage and played a song or something.
Well, now you got to wonder.
Well, I know there was some controversy with the Dice Tower a couple of years ago with a joke that he told. So, maybe there's some songs. I mean, he fancies himself a recording artist, and I would like to hear some of his stuff.
I think you also had told me when we were playing this that this Alan Moon then also designed Ticket to Ride.
That is correct. So if the name sounds familiar, that's why.
So we will mention that frequently in our description, I think, because there's a lot of tie-ins between this game. It definitely feels like a predecessor to Ticket to Ride. So back to the boring stuff. Published by Rio Grande Games. Let's see if I can give a good description of this. In Elfenland, players utilize different types of transportation. I'm glad he listed this because it gets a little wacky. Dragons, unicorns, giant pigs, elf cycles, troll wagons, magic clouds, and rafts. It's quite a motley.
It is. It does span the collective transportation spectrum, though.
I can't think what else you'd put in there, really.
I can't really think.
So you use these different forms of transportation to journey through the land and collect points for the more destinations you hit. It kind of has steps each round where you draw up a hand of cards that have your different modes of transportation, but then you also take turns collecting travel tokens that allow you to use those forms of transportation. And then you take another round placing those on the map, and then each route can only use one of those transportation tokens. And then you go around and you play your modes of transportation to move through those places, playing on yours or other players' tokens. You can use different routes or the same routes, and that's where the interaction comes in. And that might sound a little convoluted, but maybe it'll make more sense when we start talking about it. So what do you think?
Okay. Well, so I picked this up a long time ago on sale. The big box version is called Elfenroads, which I would think that the initial version would be called Elfenroads, and then the big box version would be called Elfenland. So
Kind of
that's
hindsight.
yeah. Well, he probably designed it like, okay, I'm going to call this Elfenland and then never have anything to do with it again, or, at least have like one expansion cooked up for it. So I don't know if he ever saw the big box version really in his head when he was designing it, but I think the more appropriate name would have been reversed, because Elfin Roads actually contains Elfin Gold, where players are going to bid for travel counters instead of just picking them up, which could wind up solving some of the issues that I had with the game.
Yeah, that could be fun.
There's a new obstacle with the sea monster so that you can place a sea monster in the way of the other players, and then 2 round cards to extend play to 6 rounds instead of 4. This also contains Elfin Sea, which is pretty much exactly the same game on a new map. To me, the game felt okay. It wasn't the worst thing that I've ever played, but it's okay. The game is simplish to teach. It's fairly easy. Justin's going to talk about kind of the quote-unquote extra step issue later.
Maybe easy to teach, harder to play, which is kind of backwards sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, here's what you do, and then, oh my god, okay.
Execution is difficult.
Yeah, execution's very difficult. This game does contain a ton of potential for direct player interaction. So placing the transportation tokens in addition to the obstacle that you get 1 obstacle per game. So in addition to that, just placing your extra counters where you think your opponent wants to go, it really has a potential for some really nasty interaction. If that's your thing, great. If you don't like it, that is something to be aware of. Obstacles definitely felt like an escalating Cold War, and we mentioned that yesterday as we were playing. It's kind of that I won't use them until you do, and then as soon as you use them, I'm going to put one on you because you used one on me.
It was unspoken, but I was waiting for the opportunity, and of course, as soon as I use it, you're going to get me back.
I think it's an unwritten rule that you have to do that in this game.
Yeah. No, I didn't want to let it go. I didn't want to waste it, but...
Well, you have to use it at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can really get messed up if you don't have a good mix of necessary transportation tiles. As Justin said, you're laying these transportation tiles down, and they're essentially permissions. So you have permission to use this form of transportation on this road.
And
only that. So once that is placed, that road is blocked off to anything else but that one form of transportation that you put down. So if you don't have the ability to either pick the transportation mode that really suits what your cards are, or if you don't have something that can get from point A to point B, so there's points where you might be stuck in the mountains, but you have no cards that you've drawn during the round to be able to get out of the mountains, because certain cards do certain things.
We didn't make that clear in the beginning either. There's kind of a table of which cards can travel on which terrain types, and some travel easy, meaning you spend 1 card, and some travel difficult, meaning you spend 2 cards. It's a lot of layers.
And some, they aren't allowed at all. So it depends on the mix of cards that you get. And for that reason, and the reasons I mentioned, I don't think that this is a good 2-player game. That's the only way that we've played it. So I do want to play it with 4. I've gotten some messages on my Instagram and the Facebook page that there's people that have played it at 4 players and they enjoyed it. So I think this would be a better multiplayer game where you had 4 or 5 players interacting with each other, blocking each other. And I do think that Elfin Gold expansion does solve a lot of those problems, because then you're bidding on those tokens. And if nothing comes up that you want, you just abstain from the bid and stay out of it until something comes up that you do. And eventually it will come up, I'm sure.
Except for the other day when we had nothing but clouds.
That's exactly my point. So I had nothing to choose but clouds. and I had no clouds in my hand. So it was a dead draw for me. Out of the 3 that I got to choose, one was just clouds, and it happened twice. Obviously, it's not going to happen in every single game. In fact, it's probably a rarity that that's going to happen, but it is a possibility.
And I would say it's not that the setbacks, we like a lot to take that, and we like to be able to stick the other player, but the setbacks in this can be brutal. You basically can lose your whole turn if things go wrong, pretty easily, too. You watch the other person move, and you're stuck. It's very possible to be stuck, either through your own mistakes or the other player really getting you, or just luck of the draw. It's not fun and cheeky take that. It's kind of sad and tragic.
Yes, the shenanigans that get caused by the draw are very sad. And
draw or even, I would feel bad too. There's some opportunities to take a travel token out of your hand and stick it right where you know the other player is going to go and have a good odds of it not being what they wanted it to be and just messing up their whole turn. We did avoid some of that, I think, because we knew it was just a little too brutal, even for our tastes. But I think that would be more fun with more players, because then you could really get people riled up. And maybe again in person with multiple players, we'd really have a lot of fun getting it heated. So, I mean, there's the opportunity there. As you said, I'd like to try it with more players. I'd like to try it with your expansions. You're not going to be getting rid of that anytime soon until we do that, for sure.
Right. And definitely with this playthrough, I wouldn't get rid of it until I had the opportunity to play it a couple more times. It's, again, simple enough to teach to people that I do think you could get it out relatively easy. It's just a matter of doing that and then making judgment on it. The box is taken up a pretty good amount of space with the big box version. So this is something that if I don't like it in a couple of playthroughs, it could be going.
The thing that always got me with it, as I said, there's so many steps. You got your cards in your hand, you got the tokens, you got to place the tokens, and then you play, and then you got this chart of what each card can travel where and how many cards it takes. And oh boy, it's pretty brain draining to concentrate on. I think that would be a little easier if all the cards were in my hand and I could sort them in the order I wanted to play and I had it all in front of me. I think that would go a little bit smoother. So this is one of those where I don't think the online version is faster or easier. But aside from that, it's just a lot of steps. I see why they're there, because without those steps, I don't think it would be a game. And I see the connection to where the Ticket to Ride came from, but in that it's route optimization and a map, but the mechanics are quite different. And Ticket to Ride, obviously, much easier to play. I don't know, your vote on that. I would say that the Ticket to Ride would beat this game out in just about any.
Well, and that's the other consideration that I'm looking at is what situation would I find myself in that I would rather get this out than Ticket to Ride? I don't see where this would win out over that. And I know that they are different games. I know that it's not direct route building in the traditional sense, and they are different. But I don't know when I would get this out over that. So it'll be interesting to see, like you said, the playthrough with multiple people, getting it out for that, and with some of the expansions, playing it with that, and then making a further judgment based on that. And of course, we will talk about that when it does happen. So that was Elfenland. And the final game that we're going to be talking about on this segment is one that I've been looking forward to playing for quite a while. I heard a ton about it and never got the opportunity to play it, but it is up on Board Game Arena, and that is a game called Caylus, made in 2005. So it is, again, an older game. 2 to 4 players, from 60 to 150 minutes, designed by William Attia and published by Istari. They published a copy that I have. I'm not sure if Istari is actually still in business or not. I see their name on several older games, so I'm not exactly sure if they've been purchased or if they're still even in business. In 1289, French King Philip the Fair decided to have a new castle built. Players are going to take on the role of master builders that are helping develop the city and the castle, earning prestige points and the king's favor. When the castle is finished, the player with the most prestige wins the game. So Caylus is through and through a worker placement game. It was one of the early worker placement games. There's a ton of debate. What was the first one? Caylus's name comes up. Bus comes up. There's a ton of games that come up, but Caylus is certainly always in that discussion. Players are going to utilize buildings to get resources, which are then spent constructing the castle and other buildings, which get you prestige points in return. Buildings are located along a road, and when you go to resolve your worker placement spaces, they are resolved in order along the road. Where Caylus is special is the fact that there's a provost piece that denotes where the building resolution stops. So once you travel along that road and you meet up with the provost piece, you stop taking those actions. So it is possible that somebody can place a worker that will not act during that turn. And when you have to pay to place workers, that can be pretty devastating. The provost is movable through various means by the players throughout the round, either through one of the spaces on the board, and there is the option at a certain point along the road where you can actually pay to move the provost. Justin, what is your opinion on Caylus?
It's weird, but I'd say in a good way. I really enjoyed it. It's heavy. You said that Provost is kind of a standout mechanic, the way he blocks or doesn't block, workers. But it's not the only thing that's unique. I think kind of another part of the unique worker placement style is that the board is constantly evolving as you play and you build. Everything you build is a new opportunity for new placement and a new action. I think most worker placement games, if you get new things, they kind of get unlocked as you go. But this one, you're just building that road. And so it just continuously is growing. And, now that you mention how early on it was, and one of the first worker placement games, it kind of seems like it's got all the elements of worker placement despite being so early on. Well, multiple tracks to victory kind of thing. I don't know how much in detail we want to get about all the side things like the prestige table or the favors, I guess it was. There's just a lot of routes to go. The building the castle itself, it's a lot going on. And to think that it's one of the early ones, it's very impressive that they were able to come up with all those features and have it in this early game. It's a long game, as it says, pretty heavy. The suggested playtime kind of reflects that. I'd say it probably took us at least 2+ hours, right? Boy, I know every worker placement probably kind of has this issue, but you just never have enough workers. And this just gets worse as it goes on because you're building and building more places to place them, right? We didn't get in each other's faces as much as we could have with that game. We did not use the provost as brutally as we could. I think that kind of goes back to, as we mentioned in Elfenlands, right? It's kind of mutually assured destruction. I could see so many opportunities where I could use that provost to kind of block one or two of your workers, but then you could just right after that move them even further and block a few of mine.
Well, it's that kind of attrition game of, where do you want this to go? Because if you want to really block me, I can really turn that around on you
exactly.
And make it brutal for you too.
Yeah, how dirty do we want to play it? I think with more players, you could get away with having more of that dirty play and having fun with it because you're going to have somebody who wouldn't lose out as much as the other two, and then they're going to go for it, right? Mm-hmm. So and that's a neat mechanic, but very nerve-wracking too, because boy, that really is kind of an extra variable that you have to weigh in on. Where am I going to place my guy? Where am I going to place my worker at the beginning of this turn? I really want, and the best spots are further down the track just by the nature of it, because you keep building better and better buildings, but they're closest to the provost and at more risk of being locked out. So, oh boy, there's just a lot of variables you have to weigh when you're trying to figure out where to put those guys. Do I need resources? Do I need money? This guy might get blocked. I don't know. It's frustratingly good. I think I like that. A lot of anxiety in a fun way. Whew. So, again, we like our take that and get in each other's faces, but we did play that first game pretty tame.
We did.
Neither of us ran out of money as such, I think, too.
And that's another consideration, too. Somebody could run themselves a little bit too dry, and then you could come right back up when it gets to the bridge and it's time to move that provost and just really come back up. If somebody's extended themselves too far and, really built towards the edge of where provost is, and you could just come right back up and just say, well, you spent all this money and now it's not worth anything. So it can be pretty brutal with that.
But not brutal like Elfin Roads and that you lost your whole turn. Just
No, just you've lost some of your actions.
The fun kind of brutal.
The kind that we actually like.
I think that's kind of my take on it. I think I talked a little while rambling, but
No, that's fine. The people need to know what you think. And the people are going to find out what I think about this game now. This game is number 74 as we record right now on the Board Game Geek Top 100. The game is ugly. The graphic design is pretty bland. The game is pretty raw. It feels unrefined. The gameplay is brutal. It's unforgiving. Some cubes are very colorblind averse.
purple food. What is that?
Yeah, purple or pinkish food, and then like a silverish stone.
What was that in your physical real world version too? Same colors?
That was actually it was brutal because I went back to take a picture of it for the Instagram. I looked at it and I'm like, I would have a very tough time discerning between these two. It was bad.
You have 5 or 6, I can't remember, resources. 5 resources. You have quite a color wheel you could use there. There is gray, yellow, brown, fuchsia, and purple.
Yes.
I would go pick up your food cubes and dip them in a different color paint.
Yeah, I think I may need to do that, like a sparkly silver or something like that.
Food is not sparkly silver.
Well, I don't
green.
care about the food. Well, God, that would just make it worse.
Well, for you.
Everything worse. You know, there's much more elegant worker placement games out there with a much more inviting theme. But despite everything that I just said, I really had a great time with this game. I liked it a lot. Sometimes you really just need something mechanically satisfying without the pretty overlay. I know that I talk about theme and artwork, and that's something that really gets us going. Coming back to a game like this, you know, they could slap another theme on top of it, or they could make this board prettier. This is just fine. It is so mechanically satisfying with everything, Justin, that you said, that you don't necessarily need that pretty overlay.
No, you can forgive that for sure.
Oh, yeah. And especially from 2005. I've seen worse.
Yeah.
I think Twa was one of the ugliest games I've looked at in my entire life, and I would much rather look at Caylus than Twa, as much hate as I'm going to get about saying that. But the game does play a little bit towards the long side, especially if you're playing with somebody that's AP prone as you're trying to optimize your turns, because you have to pay to place your workers, so it's not necessarily obvious, okay, if I spend a coin to place this worker, am I going to get a coin's worth or more worth a return off of it? So that can be something that's a little bit of a hindrance.
There's a few people I probably wouldn't play it with because it would take a long time.
That's very, very true. The brutality comes from the provost and being able to block your opponent from making those later actions like we talked about. But if you are aware, like Justin said, it's another variable. It's something to keep in consideration. If you lose focus, you play aggressive and you play towards the end of that track and somebody really has it out for you, they will stick you with that. It's something that you have to keep in mind. You have to play smart, you have to understand where that provost is, and you have to make sure that the decisions that you've made are going to be in alignment with your other players and where that provost sits. So I think it's such a genius mechanic. I can't believe that I've never seen it since. I don't know, maybe it was too brutal for people, but I loved it. I thought it was great. I definitely want to see this game at higher player counts with more interaction. This game could very likely get downright nasty. And I'm wondering about the player count now because I believe that I had 5 sets of tokens in my box when I looked at it. So it may play 2 to 5. I have to go back and look at that number.
That would get tight.
I think 3 people in this game would get tight, let alone.
But you'd want to see it for the
5.
interaction, though.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
I think it would get absolutely brutal. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. Might be a little bit much to teach people. We had a little bit of a struggle yesterday. I was trying to teach Justin, and I've watched 3 or 4 videos, but I think now that I played through it and can understand the mechanics a little bit better, I do think that I could do a little bit better job of teaching it, trying to convey that point across.
I think we got it now.
Yeah, especially if, we were able to play it in person. I think it would make a lot more sense. So really liked it. I would really highly recommend if you can, get a copy of it. I don't know about the new 1303 version, whether or not that's any good or not. That's not what the review's about. This is about the original Caylus. You can, again, play it on Board Game Arena if you want to try it before you buy it. I know that's something that we've recommended in the past. And again, I don't necessarily listen to my own advice, but that is an option if you want to try this gameplay. The one caveat to that being, if you are somebody that is very interaction averse, I would not recommend this game because it can get pretty brutal.
The potential is there.
The potential is absolutely there.
Yeah. And again, it's heavy. I think it's going to be hard to get to the table, unless you have your serious crew around. But it's a solid game. And I imagine that it being 15 years old, it's probably spent a long time on the top 100 on BGG. And there's probably a good reason for that. So
I'm sure. I can definitely see it. So that was Caylus. Well, stick around because up next we have Kickstarter Corner. Stay tuned. And we're back with Kickstarter Corner. Not a whole lot coming in. Once again, I do have a project to talk about, and I do have some shipping news, which is very fortunate. It's better than some of the past weeks where I've just been information devoid, and they've been like, it's on boats, it'll get to you soon, someday.
The usual Kickstarter Corner where we complain about shipping issues.
Yes, that's all we ever do on this segment. It's crazy. 2 days from now is when my Crokinole board is supposed to arrive. So I'm extremely excited about that. I got in on the Kickstarter for May Day. They do the same Kickstarter just about every year. I think it's like May or June, but it's that kind of early summer time frame that they kicked this off, and I didn't get in time for the one that they had in 2019, but when I played Crokinole at DragonCon while I was there, I was kind of hooked. Like, I'm not huge on dexterity games, as Justin will tell you for sure. I love Crokinole for such an old game.
I said your dex score is a solid 3.
If that. Like, I'm terrible. And I was playing it, and everybody else at the table was terrible too. So it was great. I mean, it was just so balanced. But no, it's a really fun game. I can see myself playing it quite a bit, and super easy to teach. So can't wait to get that. It's going to be a nice piece to have, especially for what's hopefully going to be somewhat of a return to normalcy if we have people over and we're just looking to wind down for the night, or just looking for something easy to sit around, drink a couple of beers or a couple cocktails. No, I definitely think Crokinole would be in order for that. I am still waiting on shipping notification for Dice Turn Adventures. Oh my God. Allie's making fun of me all the time because I keep checking the door and seeing is it here yet? Did I miss the shipping notification? Did it get blocked in spam or something? And she's just like, every single 2 hours you're checking the door and seeing if it's there, and it's never there. Like today I checked it and she's like, there's no mail today. So don't even bother.
Watched pot, ma'am.
I know, but God, I can't wait for it. I had such a good time with it on Tabletop Sim. I really can't wait. It looks like it's going to be awesome. And finally, Overboss is shipping in a couple of weeks. That is Brother Wise's newest game.
I didn't know you backed that.
Yes, I did. Love their artwork from the Boss Monster universe. So they're taking that artwork and making more of a tile placement game out of it. So I'm kind of mixed on Boss Monster. It's one of those games that I haven't played in a while, but I know when I backed it, it's like, yeah, this is fun. It's okay. We just kind of grew out of it, though, I think, a little bit.
I think that's fair. It was one of their entry games.
Oh, it definitely was.
And it was intriguing early at the time.
But I mean, Brotherwise has also since come out with different expansions for it, which I have a couple I haven't played.
Same here.
They also came out with Unearth, which I'm a big fan of, and Call to Adventure.
Huge fan. Yep, those are both solid games.
They definitely know how to put really, really good games out. Definitely looking forward to this one. That should be on its way in a couple of weeks, and who knows? I mean, it may get here before Dice Run Adventures does at this rate. I'm starting to convince myself of that. I also did get just earlier today shipping lockdown for the big box version of Merlin as well. So I know you haven't had the ability to enjoy that.
No, I haven't.
But Stefan Feld is always my jam, and the deluxe components for a game that I really adore. I played it back in 2018 at Origins, and I had a blast with it. So I'm really looking forward to the big box version, kind of spreading the love with some of my friends and teaching that as well. Stuff is starting to come in, like it's on the verge, and I keep saying that, but next time we should have a review of Crokinole at the very least. So looking forward to that. There is a game that I did back. I've been a little bit light on my backing lately, but there is a game that I did back that I want to discuss, and I actually posted that on the Instagram. So if you do not follow the Instagram, it's at cardboard_time, and usually that gets cross-posted to our Facebook page as well, so you can follow along. And things I'm backing, I'm trying to make sure that I post on there, because I know it doesn't necessarily get to you, the listener, in a timely manner that you can go and then check out the project and see if it's something that you want to back. The game that I'm talking about is one that really intrigued me, called Darwin's Journey, and it is by Simone Luciani, who we just talked about when we were talking about Tzolk'in. He also designed Grand Austria Hotel, Barrage, and Lorenzo Il Magnifico. Co-designed it with Nestor Mangione, who is probably best known for Newton. Darwin's Journey is another worker placement game. I know I keep saying, I should stop backing these worker placement games because we keep talking about them, but it is pretty much my favorite mechanic at this point. In Darwin's Journey, players recall Charles Darwin's memories of his adventure through the Galapagos, which contributed to the theory of evolution. Workers in this game actually have a skill progression system, which allows them to open up additional spaces and options and makes them more efficient when they go to those spaces. So that really intrigued me, as well as the theme. It's got a beautiful aesthetic to it, more of a hand-drawn feel to it. When you look at the board, it's reminiscent of those hand-drawn maps. I just love that aesthetic and that theme that really comes through in this.
I just pulled it up here. This does look amazing and quite heavy. There's a lot of stuff in here.
Oh, there's a ton of stuff going on there. It's kind of a beast of a game. Allie actually brought it up to me and she goes, "Have you backed this or have you looked at it? Like, this looks really good. It looks like it's right up your alley."
Like you need another nudge.
Pricing wise, for €45 or $55 US, you get the base and the stretch goals included. And then for €70 or $85 US, the base, the stretch goals, the Fireland expansion, I'm not exactly sure what that adds to the game, and then upgraded components, including metal coins and plastic seals. One of the game components is like a wax seal that you put on the board. So if you can imagine that, normally it's a cardboard token, and this gives you kind of a soft plastic feel to it, so much more like wax.
It's those rubbery ones like the gummies in Everdell, maybe?
Yeah, something softer like that. It looks like it's going to be a pretty hefty box. There's a lot of stretch goals that got unlocked. At first, right up front, there was a huge amount that got unlocked. So I don't know exactly what they were expecting it to do, but I know that they've been pretty pleased with the response. So that's something that, again, I'm trying to curtail my spending a little bit, but we kind of thought this is a nice investment.
It looks like a sound investment. I was going to add, in the nature of Kickstarter Corner, looking at this based on the time left, by the time you post this, there might be roughly a day left to back. So,
Yep.
Sorry.
Which, again, Which again is why we post that on the Instagram and the Facebook to make sure that
Yeah.
people have an idea of this is going on, this is something that we are backing, and then you guys can make the judgment for yourself. Unfortunately, this doesn't get to you in a timely manner in order for you to make those backing decisions. So,
Or you can wait to listen to this and make a very rash decision.
and who knows, maybe they'll have a late pledge.
That's becoming more common, huh? Since you bring it up, I brought you a trash game for Christmas.
You did, yes.
But you got me a very nice game for me and my wife, especially Unicorn Fever. I remember seeing this on Kickstarter a while back, probably about a year. I don't remember exactly why I wavered on it. I think it was probably something along the lines of just because it's unicorn themed, I don't know if my wife will like it. So I decided to wait. But now that we've got it and we pulled it open, yeah, I think she's going to have a fun time with it. We haven't actually played it yet, but she's been asking about it. It has some fantastic little minis. I will say the one thing is they're a lot smaller than I imagined by looking at the package, but they're still well crafted and stupidly cute. So,
did you mention the title of this game that I got
I thought
you?
I did. Unicorn Fever. Did I not?
Okay,
I may
just
have,
making sure.
I may have glossed over that. I guess we'll review that one in the coming future, hopefully.
I do really like the aesthetic of it.
I will say, too, not knowing how a game plays on Kickstarter, that was kind of a gamble for a unicorn theme. I don't feel that you're taking that big of a gamble with Darwin's Journey. I think that one's going to be solid.
I think it's going to be great. One last thing that I did want to mention that is not in our show notes is, speaking of upcoming things from Kickstarter Corner, upcoming events, the dates for Origins 2021 were announced. This news is hopeful that there's going to be a widespread distribution of the vaccine in time, that combined with that and safety protocols, they are going to be able to actually have a in-person Origins this year.
Yay.
No kidding. When I saw the news, it's September 30th through the 3rd, I believe, of October. And as soon as I saw the news, I messaged Justin. I said, "We get in a hotel room. What are we doing?" I was so excited to hear this. And I know that we've talked about this in the past, but I really do miss conventions. I miss the in-person interaction. I miss getting to see new games come out and being able to play them with friends. And Origins is kind of my exposure to what's upcoming, what's coming out. So, and it's our hometown convention. I mean, we're
as
only
close as it gets.
Yeah, exactly. We're only like 2 hours away. So Origins is definitely like a home away from home when it comes to gaming for us. And we always have a fantastic time there.
Oh, yeah.
That is upcoming. That has been announced. I'm still waiting on Gen Con this year to see what our plans are going to be for that. I think there was maybe a partial hesitation to announce until Origins announced, but hopefully Gen Con will be coming out with their plans soon, so we can get kind of a idea of what the schedule looks like for this year.
Let's hope plans hold.
You're going to want to stay tuned because as much as I like buying games, sometimes you have to say goodbye. So we will talk about saying goodbye to our games next. Welcome back. As much as we like buying games,
or watching you buy games,
in your case, sometimes some of those games do have to hit the sale pile, and that can be for a number of reasons. Usually mine is I've run out of shelf space and I can't pile them up any further, so I wind up having to get rid of some things. But I have recently sent some games to the sale pile. Kickstarters are starting to roll in, games are starting to get played, so as we play them, you need to strongly consider what you have on your shelf. And there's different methods I go through to kind of figure out, okay, is this going to stay or is this going to go? So the easy one to look at is games that don't appeal at all
to us. And then they won't be missed and we don't feel bad.
No, yeah. And I would say the most recent example of that was my playthrough of Bears vs. Babies. I had gotten this one out to the table. table solo. And again, I try to make it a big habit not to completely judge a game based off of a solo play or a solo variant that I've played. Even official solo variants sometimes aren't the greatest things in the world. There was a game that I don't want to say exactly what game it was. I got a message after one of my blog posts on BGG about some criticisms I had of the solo mode. And basically the designer came back to me and said, "You're not wrong." And the publisher of the game actually, I'm not sure if they made him put a solo mode in or if they created their own solo mode and put it in there. And the solo mode was not good. I mean, it just wasn't appealing at all. And I was kind of on the fence about getting rid of it. And he said, "Please do yourself a favor and try this at least with 2 players, if not more."
And he was right.
He was absolutely right. We got it out later and we played it, and it was a fantastic game. It's still on my shelves. It's not going anywhere.
But you can believe that would happen. They just want to expand the player count for marketability.
Oh, exactly.
So I guess that's something to be wary of.
Because I guess 1 to 4, and especially these days, 1 to 4 looks a lot better than 2 to 4. Getting back to Bears versus Babies, I tried to get the solo to learn the mechanics of it. And I'm like, even multiplayer, I don't think I'm going to wind up liking this. I did get the chance to play it multiplayer, and it just is not a good game. There's a lot of issues with it. I won't go into them all, but it's just not the kind of game that I'm looking to have on my shelf. I don't think that I would ever recommend it to anybody. Certainly, it might appeal to some people, and some people might have a great time with it, but for me, it just wasn't anything that I found super enjoyable.
And I think I agree with you. I will say that early on, I think I backed all those oatmeal games. I was really excited about them. They look super fun, right?
I did too.
Despite our take on them, I do know people who still like some of their games, and maybe Bears versus Babies. And so, it does fit some taste, but not ours. It's just they're quite random.
Yes.
And I think that's where it's just too much random and not enough strategy.
The next one that I kind of look at, and I've been looking at a lot more lately, is games that have a quote-unquote replacement game to them. And I actually have 2 outstanding examples of that. The first one was Alan's Adventureland. And I know when we played it with Craig, he doesn't necessarily agree with me on this. Alan's Adventureland is very easily replaceable by Quadropolis. Quadropolis, to me, has Alan's Adventureland beat in the fact that the component quality is better, the gameplay is better, and it's a lot less fiddly.
It's polished.
It's definitely more polished, and it came out the same year too. The other one that's a little bit more of a hot take that sometimes I get some discussion around is Puerto Rico. And I know Puerto Rico is beloved by many a player. It was a game that, like Catan, is kind of an entryway for a lot of players into the hobby and getting deeper into the hobby.
And the beginning of the modern hobby too, even, I would say.
It's an influential game, and I don't think you can take anything away from that. It's always going to have its place in history. To me, and there's a long history of how this came to be, but New Frontiers very easily replaces Puerto Rico. For me, usually I wind up playing with less experienced players. When we get things out to the table, usually it's a new hotness that we play. We don't wind up playing things over and over and over again. Puerto Rico does have the caveat of a skilled player will basically always beat somebody who is newer to the game. So a skilled player is going to be able to take advantage of certain mistakes that might be made early on, and to the point that it just secures them a win. That is something that comes up that I don't like about Puerto Rico. But again, it's not saying that Puerto Rico is a bad game. It's not. It's a really, really good, solid game. There is also an issue that I alluded to on the Instagram about the time that it was designed. There were some design choices that some people have some issues with, and rightfully so. You know, hearing about some of the thoughts from native Puerto Ricans about some of the design choices, some of the colors that were used, and some of the themes themes and some insensitivities from the game. Those are all issues. It was designed at a time that I don't think we were as kind of aware of certain things. That was an issue too. I'm not going to lie and say that that wasn't part of my decision. Again, New Frontiers to me just has a better theme. I would much rather play a space game over dealing with trade goods in colonial times. I would much rather play stuff in space. The components are way better. Just everything about it I like a lot better. And then the final category that I get into are games that I don't really think have aged well. And that can be anywhere from fiddliness to component quality. If a game plays okay, I can forgive some of those elements, but sometimes the gameplay is okay, and then you either have a lot of things to keep track of, or you have really awful components. The fiddliness aspect of it, Galactic Strike Force is my most recent example of it. There are so many different things that you have to keep track of in Galactic Strike Force, and it's by the same team that did Sentinels of the Multiverse. But in Sentinels of the Multiverse, I'm so engaged in the gameplay and what's going on that I have a great time. I don't mind dealing with all that tracking. Those things I can forgive if the gameplay is good enough. And I did not feel that way with Galactic Strike Force at all. Well, I think that's going to do it. Certainly, as the year progresses, I am going to have to get other things off my shelf. And as that happens, we will certainly consider bringing this segment back.
It's a big part of cleaning up the shelf of shame, isn't it?
It is. When you play something, sometimes you have to get rid of them.
I will say, back to Bears versus Babies, I will not be getting rid of my unexploded kittens because it's the box that meows when you open it.
Until the batteries go dead, then what are you going to do?
Might figure out a way to fix that.
Okay. Well, at least you have a solution for that. I'm still on the fence about that. It's been ages since I played that game, but it's not something that I look back at and I'm thinking, man, I need to get this to the table again. So, I don't know. That could be on a future list.
It might be on the block.
You never know.
Well, we don't like the random ones, as we said. The pure randomness.
Randomness with a purpose is fine. Randomness without a purpose is just pure chaos, and it's not enjoyable. Well, I think that's going to do it for us today. Thank you very much once again for listening. Make sure to check out our Facebook. Our Instagram is at cardboard_time. Check out our Board Game Geek podcast page. And if you have any questions, suggestions, or ideas for discussion topics, make sure to send an email to cardboardtime@gmail.com. And once again, as always, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for another episode of Cardboard Time.
Thanks, everybody.